Imagine a world where the printing press was never invented. No mass-produced books, no newspapers reaching millions, no cheap textbooks in every classroom, no pamphlets spreading revolutionary ideas across entire nations. For centuries, knowledge would remain trapped in handwritten pages. But what if Gutenberg had never changed history? What would our world look like today? In the real timeline, Johannes Gutenberg's printing press appeared in Europe during the 15th century. It didn't create writing, it didn't create books, but it changed something far more important. It made information reproducible on a massive scale, and that single change transformed civilization. Now imagine that it never happened. The first thing that changes is simple. Books remain incredibly expensive. Before printing, every copy had to be written or copied by hand. A skilled scribe could spend months producing a single manuscript. Imagine wanting to own a book and discovering that it costs as much as a luxury possession. For ordinary farmers, merchants, workers, and even many educated people, books would remain almost impossible to afford. Libraries would stay small. Schools would have very few copies of important texts, and knowledge would remain concentrated in monasteries, universities, wealthy households, and royal courts. But the consequences wouldn't stop there. Religion would change dramatically. In the 16th century, Martin Luther challenged the Catholic Church with ideas that spread across Europe. But Luther didn't simply speak. His arguments were printed. Thousands of pamphlets and copies of his writings could be produced and distributed rapidly. Without the printing press, that explosion of information becomes almost impossible. Luther might still challenge the church, but his ideas would travel from person to person much more slowly. A movement that reached entire countries could remain a local dispute. The Protestant Reformation might still happen, but it could look completely different, and the Catholic Church might retain far greater control over religious information for much longer. Then comes another enormous consequence: science. Imagine a scientist making a groundbreaking discovery, but having no cheap way to distribute it. A handwritten manuscript might reach a few scholars, perhaps dozens, but not thousands. Ideas that should spread across Europe in months could take years or decades. Scientists would have to rely heavily on personal correspondence, traveling scholars, and handwritten copies. Knowledge would still advance. Human curiosity would not disappear, but scientific progress could become slower and far more fragmented. Imagine Galileo discovering something revolutionary. Now imagine his work being copied by hand, again and again, before reaching another scientist. Every copy takes time. Every copy creates the possibility of mistakes, and every new discovery depends on a tiny network of people who can actually access it. The scientific revolution might still arrive, but perhaps much later. Education would also look completely different. Today, a classroom can have hundreds of identical textbooks. In this alternate world, that would be nearly impossible. Teachers might have one important manuscript. Students would copy sections by hand. Lessons would depend heavily on oral teaching and memory. Literacy could spread much more slowly, and education might remain a privilege of elites for centuries longer. Then comes perhaps the biggest change: politics. The printing press gave ordinary people something incredibly powerful: the ability to encounter the same ideas. A political pamphlet could cross a city, then a region, then an entire country. Without printing, political movements become harder to organize. Revolutionary ideas remain scattered. Governments have an easier time controlling information, and ordinary people have fewer ways to challenge official narratives. Think about the American Revolution. Ideas about liberty, representation, and independence spread through newspapers, pamphlets, books, and political essays. Without mass printing, those ideas could still exist, but spreading them across 13 colonies would be dramatically harder. The French Revolution could also develop differently. Political writings helped create a shared public debate. Without them, revolutionary movements might be smaller, slower, and easier to suppress. But here's where the story gets even more interesting. Humanity would eventually try to solve the information problem. Someone would almost certainly invent another technology for reproducing words. Perhaps woodblock printing would become dominant. Perhaps governments would develop mechanical copying machines. Perhaps an entirely different invention would eventually replace the printing press. The question isn't whether humans would ever discover mass communication. communication. The question is, how long would it take? And what would civilization look like during that delay? Maybe the Renaissance would last longer. Maybe religious wars would unfold differently. Maybe democracy would arrive centuries later. Maybe scientific discoveries that transformed medicine, engineering, and technology would be delayed by generations. Even the modern internet might look completely different. Because the digital information revolution didn't appear from nowhere. It was built on centuries of increasingly efficient ways to copy and distribute information. Manuscripts led to printing. Printing led to newspapers and mass publishing. Mass publishing helped create modern education and scientific communication. And eventually, those systems helped lead to radio, television, computers, and the internet. Remove the printing press from that chain, and the entire path of technological history could change. But perhaps the most important consequence would not be technological, it would be human. The printing press gave ideas something they had never possessed at that scale: speed. An idea could escape the person who created it. It could cross borders. It could survive governments. It could reach people the author would never meet. A revolutionary thought could become a movement. A scientific discovery could become a new field. A political argument could inspire an entire generation. Without the printing press, ideas would still exist. People would still write. People would still learn. People would still question authority. But ideas would move slowly. And in history, speed matters, because civilization doesn't change only when someone discovers something new. It changes when enough people can learn about that discovery, share it, challenge it, improve it, and pass it to the next generation. So perhaps the greatest thing Gutenberg created wasn't the printed book. It was a world where knowledge could finally travel faster than the people carrying it. Without the printing press, humanity might still have reached the modern age, but the journey could have taken centuries longer, and somewhere in that alternate world, brilliant ideas may have been discovered, only to disappear inside a single handwritten manuscript, never copied, never shared, never remembered. The printing press didn't just change how we read, it changed how humanity thinks.